Welcome to One Author, Three Names Revisited. It's been almost 10 years since I first made the video explaining why I use 3 different pen names, and a lot has changed in that time, so I thought I would revisit that today just as an update and another explanation for a new generation of readers. So welcome to my world. You're here in my study. And a lot of thinking goes on in here. I mean, I'm still the same person even if I am writing under 3 different names. But almost the first question I get asked when I do public events is why use different names? And I thought I'd explain that now. So first of all, I am still writing as Julia Golding. That's my sort of home name, the one I go back to. So I'm still writing for children under this name, and at the moment I'm writer in residence at the Royal Institution. And a lot of the books I've been writing recently have had a science theme, ranging from the wonderful world of the Curious Science Quest, where we've bounced across the entire history of science, from cavemen to the present day, to an adventure story set in a magical science museum where there is a murderer on the loose. Then that book is called The Curious Crime. So going from those books, I also still have many others that are in print. So the Cat Royal books are still available, and there's also work on Cat Royal, The Diamond of Drury Lane musical, which I hope very soon to see reach the stage. Fingers crossed for that one. It's been a long process. But Cat can still be read about, and please do look her up if you've not yet met her. And there are many other books by me as Julia Golding still in print. So moving on from the Julia Golding titles, which tend to be for either children or young adults, and then the sort of stage and screen type work I've been doing recently. But moving on from that, I have my name Joss Stirling. Now, this started off as a YA name, a young adult name, with a paranormal romance called Finding Sky, which is still very popular all around the world. So hello to Finding Sky fans. But in addition to that, I have a series about young detectives, and that starts with a book called Struck, and that won the Romantic Novel of the Year in 2015. But after having done those 2 series, I've carried on writing for YA, and you can find other series under that name, particularly one starting with a book called Peril, which is about a world slightly in the future going through climate change. But I also took the decision a few years back to start writing for adults, and I discovered that I have quite a dark side, and writing as Joss Stirling, I have written 2 psychological thrillers. The first one is a book called Don't Trust Me, which is exactly as the title suggests, a book which is supposed to leave you confounded as to who you need to trust in the story. And the main character in that is a rather hapless detective figure called Jessica Bridges, who I hope you'll fall in love with, as I did as I was writing her character. She's all over the place. She is definitely not a saint, but hopefully she's quite entertaining company to be with in that book. And then this year, that's 2019, I published a book called The Silence, which is another psychological thriller. And here we have 2 main characters. One is a violinist called Jenny, who's been left unable to speak after some trauma that happened to her as a young girl. And then her sort of counterpart is a man called Jonah, who is an ex-convict who is turning his hand to starting a career as an actor. And in this book I fell in love with Jonah in particular. I very strongly feel for Jenny, but Jonah was the one who emerged during the writing process that I wanted to know more about, so I may well be returning to some of those characters later on. And last but not least is my name Eve Edwards. I started Eve as a name for writing young adult historical fiction, and you can still get many of those titles, in particular a duet about the First World War that starts with a book called Dusk, going into the war, and Dawn, which takes us out of the other side of the war. So please do look those up if you like historical novels. But exciting news on Eve Edwards is that under that name I'll soon be putting out a book called The Summer of Wishful Thinking. That's due out next summer. as you might imagine from the title. And under that name, I'm doing something which apparently is called uplit. This means fiction which has plenty of story and suffering and the trials and tribulations of life, but with a positive upbeat. And apparently this is a genre. Who knew? I do now. That's what I've written. I thought it might be more of a romantic comedy, but I think it sort of has moved into a slightly more literary area, so that's why they're calling it uplit. So do look out for that, and I'll post more news about that soon. That's an adult novel. So as with Joss Stirling, I'm doing both YA titles under Eve Edwards and adult novels. I hope that you can follow that. Do keep in touch with my website, because there'll always be news and updates there for you to follow what I'm up to. Anyway, so thank you for listening. This was the 2019 version of One Author, Three Names. I wonder what I'll be saying in 2025. Who knows?